who the fuck was I also at like 18, 19, 20 to be given advice really?
Welcome, everyone, to This Was the Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. The Wonder Years sound was a fast-paced tone of melodic energy that celebrated the feelings of being young and dumb. Led by singer Brian Moss, aka B. Moss, the band started its journey in California's Bay Area and lasted till about 2000. 2000-ish, because after that he did The Ghost, and then he did Honolulu, and then he did Great Apes, which I'll shortly mention again later. I met Brian on the last Lane Meyer tour. Now, anyone new to the podcast, my old band was called Lane Meyer, and we did a final tour with the Lawrence Arms in 2000 that went from New Jersey up through the top of the United States, then down through Texas and back up to New Jersey. This tour was supposed to be about 2 months. I think we got to almost 2 months, and when we got to Chicago, we met with this crazy band called the Wunder Years. I don't mean crazy like they were crazy people. They were just super fucking awesome individuals who, to this day, I just absolutely have just great things to say about them. In the band at that time, it was Brian, Josh, Shane, and Caitlin. I had learned so much on that tour, and with these guys, just that leg from Chicago out to El Gatos, California, they were great people to be with, and a lot of this stuff in this interview are me and Brian kind of reminiscing about that time and talking about the Wonder Years and what the scene was like in the Bay Area, and the standard structure of the podcast. So I reached out to Brian on Facebook and was like, "Yo, bro, we should rap a little bit about the late '90s scene," and he was like, "Cool, man, let's fucking do it." So I got him on the phone, and this is what we talked about. How he's currently teaching the youth of today, touring with the Lawrence Arms, being friends with Jessie from Aunt Bobby's little sister, this was crazy, eviction parties, the digital era we are in, their drummer Caitlin being the shit, which she completely is and was, and all that, the Nile in Mesa, Arizona, drinking floaters at parties, and a ton more. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you should go check out his bands after the Wonder Years, which were The Ghost, Honolulu, or Hanalei, or Hanalihi, and Great Apes. And Great Apes were on Asian Man Records. I didn't know that until I was doing some research right now. It's good stuff, so you should go check that out. And if you didn't know, Brian had his baby boy Oliver Mattingly Moss on 5/13/19 in San Francisco, California this past week. So, Brian, that's awesome. Congratulations to you. And your boy is born the day after my birthday, so he's even more great. If you haven't heard, on Friday, August 16th, 2019, yes, this upcoming August 16th, Humble Beginnings will be playing a show with Digger, Jettison, and Avery at Asbury Park Brewery in Asbury Park, New Jersey. This is presented by Aftermath Collective, which is run by the infamous Joe Polito, who runs the NJPP archives. If you haven't checked that out online, you should go do so. The show is almost sold out. I think yesterday they were saying it was like 75% sold out. So last year when Laymeyer played a show with Humble, it sold out within like 2 weeks. This thing is on a path of selling out in like days. So you should definitely go buy tickets when you get a chance. And then you should go to the show and all that great stuff. Check out some new merch on thiswasthescene.com. It helps support the podcast. You could also help by donating by whatever you want, or you could do Patreon, and it's $1 a month. That's also on the website at the very top. And real quick, I'm starting this new thing where I'm doing a weekly email where it's a video from back in the day that I find. Like the last two I sent out was Less Than Jake playing a show in like New Jersey somewhere in '95. And the last one I sent out was like a full No Effects set. And I did fuck up that email because I put in the headline No Effects / Balance and Composure, but in it was No Effects video and then a video by this band Bliss. I guess I just kind of changed my mind at the last minute. So yeah, sorry about that, but whatever, fuck it. But you should check it out. It's free. Just go to thiswasthescene.com. You can sign up for that free email there. And also, I just realized that other podcasts are doing this, and I haven't even done it. But a lot of people don't know that I have an email for this podcast. It's thiswasthescene@gmail.com. So if you'd like to, please send me some feedback. I'd love to hear from you. You can email again, thiswasthescene@gmail.com. You can email me with bands that you'd like me to interview. Again, it has to fall in the theme of the late 90s, early 2000s. ways you think I could improve the show. Casey Lee Morgan reached out to me and was like, hey, dude, you should do reviews on newer bands and things like that. And I don't really know that I'm qualified to do that. Like, I read articles where people do that shit, and I'm not as gifted as they are. But him saying that helped me catapult that idea that I had about sending that weekly email about old videos of bands, because that's what I like to do is find bands playing from back in, like, you could search YouTube for like 1992 Bad Religion and a bunch of videos pop up, and it's really fun. So since I'm already doing that, I figured it'd be cool to just email people once a week and say, hey, I found this. Or if you just feel like saying hello, you can email me as well. So that's it. Okay, let's see. Did I cover everything? Yep. Awesome. Feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some punk rock nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. Are you up still in the Bay Area?
Yeah, I live out by the beach in San Francisco, and I work in South City by the airport.
Oh, wow. Did you grow up there? Actually, no,
Right?
wait. Don't answer that question. I'm going to ask you that later.
Okay.
Actually, yeah. So how you been, man?
I've been good, dude. Just getting ready for this kid, which is, exciting and terrifying at the same time. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
saw that. I saw that on Facebook.
shit's good. I think I'm gonna have to leave the Bay Area when that happens eventually within a year or so because it's gotten so fucking expensive that I don't think I can hang. But we'll see.
Yeah, I can kind of imagine that. What are you doing now? Like, what's the professional gig now?
Eighth grade English teacher.
Really?
Yeah, man.
I could see that. I could totally see that. Are you like giving them like giant speeches about life and taking shit in your own hands and stuff, like
I
punk rock
I
style?
go sometimes, but yeah. I mean, you have to dial it back a bit. I would do more if I could, or if I felt like I wasn't risking myself professionally. But
Do you ever find yourself like getting into a bit of a tangent and they kind of get it?
yeah, and it's tricky, man, because middle school. I've taught a little bit of high school, and with the tangents, high schoolers seem to get into it a little more, but middle schoolers are developing mentally so much that I'll start going off on some shit. I have to teach Steinbeck, and that plays into like classism and the errors of the American dream, and I'll start riffing on it, and then just yeah, kids are like bug-eyed. Maybe one or two will get it, but I'm stoked for those one or two.
Do you ever think back to when you were in like middle school and you probably had a teacher who was doing that to you, and now you look at it and you're like, oh my God, that was awesome, but then you were like, oh God, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, a lot of them went over my head, but a couple stand out. I feel like I blacked out middle school, other than a handful of memories or like social situations, because it was such a just a fucked up mental time. So,
It's true. Yeah, I couldn't. I remember. There's still conversations I remember with kids from back in middle school where they were talking to me about either music or politics, and my whole view of life was TV. Like that was the main. It was like whatever was, Full House and Step by Step and shit like that. Yeah, right. Or
right,
whatever it was.
that's your
Yeah,
gateway into society and the world
yeah.
for
That was
sure.
my gauge. When people tried to take that away from me, I got very defensive. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I don't want to think this big. And then as I got older, I kind of was just it just it made more sense as I got into like middle school and then high school, or I'm sorry, high school and then like after high school, I was like, oh shit, okay, I kind of get it now.
I had this like horrible on this exact note, this horrible realization about 4 or 5 years ago. Since I started teaching, I have this old London Calling poster that was literally in my bedroom when I was probably 15 years old, and I've kept it, and it's just been in whatever classroom since then. And at first, I was like, "That's rad! Like kids are gonna get this." And then I realized, holy shit, I'm no different than the old hippie burnout that thought his Pink Floyd poster hanging on the wall when I was in high school was badass, and
Yeah,
it just looks lame.
yeah, we've become lame.
Yeah, but just dinosaur them. But so it goes. Like I've accepted my fate.
Yeah, I have a bit of a gauge because my little sister is 22, so I try to like gauge how she like reacts to things that I still talk about now because I'll be 40 in about 3 weeks.
Yeah, you and
And
I are super close. I'm like a month and a half off.
what are you, June or July?
June 30th. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Actually, no, you're not a Taurus. What are you, Cancer? Do you
Cancer. Yeah,
do the sign thing?
not really. I mean, it's I don't want to bash it. It's just not my thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think that would be your thing.
Wait, hold up. You're breaking up, Mike. Sorry.
What road are you on anyway?
I'm on, let's see, 35 north, right out by the coast. It's like kind of cuts from down in Daly City, back north.
I'm actually gonna pull up a map now so I can be aware of your
It's
area.
Daly City. The Weeds theme song, "Tiny Boxes."
Yeah.
It was written about Daly City, and it looks. The song provides a pretty accurate description of what the houses look like.
Is that where you're driving through, or is that where you live?
That's where I'm driving through. I don't think I could live there, and it's surprisingly not much cheaper than where I live now, despite it being a lot uglier.
So the question I was asking before when it broke up is I feel like when did you guys tour as the Ghost, or did you tour in the Ghost with Lawrence Arms?
Yeah, at least I'd say at least 3 times, maybe more. Sometimes just for a week or two, and then I think we did one maybe like month-long jaunt with them.
Okay. Because I felt that didn't I see you guys when I was living in San Diego and you toured through with them?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, okay. Because it was like some weird ass. I don't even know what the fuck that was. It wasn't like what's the place with like plants and shit and arboretum? It was,
That doesn't sound familiar. There's Shea Cafes, collectively run, super old school, kind of on par with like Gilman. Um, but definitely wasn't there. I remember where that show
it
was,
was close to La Jolla. It was in La Jolla actually.
and maybe it was Shea. Was it small?
Uh,
And
yeah, there was no. I don't think there. I don't even know there was a stage. The stage was like the floor.
it's super small. That's Shea Cafe. Yeah,
Okay, yeah, I think that was it. And then yeah, that was Jesus
that
Christ.
place is rad. They were having problems in there. Actually, I think they're doing a fair amount of shows again these days,
Oh really?
which is cool.
Oh, fucking A.
They've been around forever, man.
So anyone listening, everyone gets the whole theme to this podcast. It's talking about the late '90s punk scene, and the beginning was based in Jersey, and then I actually expanded outside of it, or branched outside of it into the bands that influenced us. And so Brian here was in a band called the Wonder Years, or was it just Wonder Years or the Wonder Years?
It was and then we had to change the spelling because the label worried about legal pursuit from the television show or whatever network put that out.
Yes. So it was Wonder Years with a U, if anyone's trying to look them up while they're listening
Yeah.
to this. Yeah. So I didn't, so I want to reach out to Brian because Brian was in, with obviously the Wonder Years, as I just said, but the last tour that we went on was with them, or it was with the Lawrence Arms, the whole thing, but the Wonder Years, we got together for about a 2 weeks, three,
Yeah, I
like
want to say two, 3.
well, we met in Fireside was the first show we played together, and then we branched off when we were in San Francisco after playing Los Gatos at that show with Link 80.
Right, was that at the outhouse in Los Gatos?
I don't know. It was like a youth center.
Yeah, that's the outhouse,
Okay,
I think.
had like arcade games in it and shit in a different room or like
Oh
pool
no,
table.
no, yeah, I don't. Maybe someone will listen to this and be able to tell us. I don't remember the name of that
I
spot.
think I think I asked Mike Park. Yeah, because I talked about him. I talked to him, and obviously I interviewed him, and I had said the same thing, and I remember him mentioning it. I was like, yeah, that sounds exactly like what it was. But yeah, but Brian, he took up residence in the opposite coast of Jersey, and I wanted to talk to him because he was in the Wonder Years, and then he did the Ghost, and so he transitioned into the early 2000s and kind of wrote, stuck with it as everything was changing, and then did. Now, I always said Hanley.
Yeah, Hanalei, whatever feels
Honolulu.
good to you.
Yeah, but at that time you did that when you were living in Chicago, right?
Yeah, I started out there, and I still occasionally do that. I'm actually kind of working on a new record right now, but that's just you can't break up your own solo project unless you're really fucking up. So
Yeah. Well, that's why you do it, so you could just do it forever and just take like a 5, 7 year break and go, oh, I feel a little saucy. I want to do I want to do a record right now.
exactly.
Yeah. So Brian got to live in the Bay Area and see that whole thing, and he got to grow up in that era and see what that scene was like. So I wanted to talk to him about that, talk to him about being in a band, and touring and things like that, and then kind of dip into a little bit of the tour that we went on because there was well, we learned a few things from these guys. One was I talked about it in the episode that just launched this past week was with my pal Trigger, and they talked about how they would like buy groceries and stuff on tour, and we never thought to do this until we toured with the Wonders. Nate, what was that meat you guys bought? It was like fake meat, or it was like really cheap meat. Do you remember this?
I don't know. I mean, probably I went veg at 19, so it might have been fake meat. It had to. I don't know. Maybe other dudes were like thrashing Lunchables or something.
Yeah, I thought about it the other day about how gross this shit was, but it was because there was Oscar Mayer, which was like $3 to $4, and this stuff was like $1 for the same amount of stack of processed meats. And
So
yeah,
everyone's life expectancy has like a few years dropped off it for
yeah,
eating that shit for a couple weeks.
yeah, or just really well preserved.
Yeah, pickled.
But yeah, man. So as I do in all interviews, I like to really take everything back to the beginning and find out like what got you fucking fired up about music, what led you into playing in a band, how the band started, and all that, and then kind of go through, touring and recording and all that, living in a van on the road because a lot of bands didn't get a chance to go on the road and actually live in a cargo van or a conversion van, which was like the fucking Hilton of style of vans. Like it was like we had that's when you had windows and a trailer and some space. But so I want to go back and start with when you were a child. What was the song or the band that got you super fucking fired up about music?
So when I was super young, I was really into 50s pop, which is kind of strange. Maybe my mom was playing a lot of it, but I really liked it. I thought the songs were super catchy. And that I'd say that lasted into I don't know in mid grade school. I remember my mom taking me to see the Beach Boys
Oh wow.
during like the Kokomo era, which was that's just dark fucking times for the Beach Boys.
Cousin
Um,
Jesse on the drums or Uncle Jesse on the drums.
yeah, dude, it was yeah. I don't know. It stands out. I remember it was one of those weird rotating stages too. This place called the Star Circle Arena. So it's kind of like no matter where you're sitting, you're gonna get a slice of them at some point when the shit rotates around. But uh, or like beyond that, in late in probably grade school and middle school, it's just kind of a buffet of all different types of pop music. Definitely kind of mainstream rap and hip hop, pop, and then also rock. And later on in middle school, I was listening to just arena metal, fucking Guns N' Roses and Metallica, um, and I liked it. And of course, Nirvana was kind of breaking around, and I actually got to see Nirvana
Oh wow.
in middle school, which was like that was pretty moving for me, and I think that kind of started edging me away from just the run of the mill kind of like metal and rock. Not that I didn't like the loudness and the intensity, but I don't think any of that stuff really ever spoke to me or resonated.
What do you mean?
And about around the same time,
Well,
it just I didn't the lyrics are totally unrelatable. It's like souls fucking heroin junkies, and I'm in sixth or seventh grade or whatever, and it's like
okay.
or banging chicks, which I certainly wasn't doing. And yeah, just none of it connected something that I could relate to. And interestingly enough, I had a couple friends really are responsible for getting me into punk. One was Jesse Michaels from Op Ivy's little sister, and they'd grown up about a block and a half, 2 blocks from my parents' house. So she was essentially just, felt inclined to pass off her brother's stuff to me. And hey, here's an Op Ivy tape to my brother's band. Like this is what we're listening to her. And here's some other bands. And the other girls, I think my brother, stepbrother, was in another band on Lookout called the Winona Riders. So they kind of just started giving me these like curated tapes of this just rad shit that I wouldn't have been exposed to otherwise.
Wait, so hold
And
on there.
they're
I want to kind of dig into that. So you're getting the sister from which who is it? Which member from Op Avi was it? Jesse?
the singer was Jesse's little sister. Yeah.
So okay, so you're in sixth grade and you're getting
No, this is like ninth grade, eighth grade-ish kind
okay,
of time frame.
but like she was just like, "Hey, my brother's in this cool band," or did you know them and say like, "Holy shit, like that's your
No,
brother?"
sir, that was my introduction to Operation Ivy, and I think what Op Ivy broke up in '89, and this is we're talking like 92, 93, which now you're like, oh, that's nothing, but when you're a kid, 3, 4 years is an insurmountable amount of time. So I definitely they weren't on my radar, and she just basically introduced me to that band, and then her friend introduced me to her brother's band, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. It was pretty wild.
What was it about it though that like when you heard that style of music? Because you were saying obviously in sixth grade you hear Nirvana. Because you and me are like, we graduated high school what 97 same year.
Yeah, same here.
So we started hearing these songs at the same exact time in our lives, where we were 10 when Nirvana, it was like 10 or 11 when Nevermind came out, and that was just, I've talked about this in so many interviews where I saw that video and it just unlocked this thing in my brain where I'm like, I don't even know what to do with this. And
Right.
then I remember going into high school and then like Green Day and Offspring and all that was introduced, but and then that's where they were like the top level hits, but then the lower level or like the underground level was like the Op Ivies and No Effects and things like that. So like that's fucking wild to me.
Yeah, I was incredibly fortunate, to have these three, and the third friend of theirs, and we all became really good friends. Actually, ended up playing in my first band ever with these three young women. Um, and I can't express how fortunate I feel and the gratitude I feel towards them, and just ending up kind of haphazardly in that situation. And also, of course, growing up around Berkeley, and there was Albany. I went to high school in El Cerrito. There was just all this kind of stuff going on with punk. We had Gilman, a bunch of great record stores, and then once I started digging in a little deeper, there's this just vibrant history of it going on. So it was that was very fortunate. But
Did you kind of get it though? Like, did you catch it? Wait, once it opened your eyes and you started learning a bit more about those bands and the scene, like, did you get that the place you were living in was such like an epicenter for that scene, like the music we were
I
listening
don't.
to?
Honestly, I don't think so. No,
Hmm.
unfortunately. Later on, I'd say once I was out of high school, um, in late teens, I'd say late in high school, I had a pretty good grasp on the history of the era and the bands and the waves of punk and how they'd washed through. But it takes a while for some people to appreciate their hometown and kind of the blessings they have in a certain place.
Yeah.
And that came to me later. And that by no means, I mean, we could talk about this if you want, but it's by no means do I think that the Bay Area has an unflawed punk scene, because that would completely go against how I actually feel.
Well, I wouldn't say
Yeah.
that. I actually, and that's the funny thing too, why I want to talk to you because I felt that when we had met, you were almost like you knew where you came from and you knew that scene, but I also felt like you were kind of like tired of it or it wasn't impressing you where a lot of people were like they look at Chicago, look at San Francisco, look at New York City and they're like, "Oh my God." And you're kind of like, "Yeah, I'm there and I'm seeing it firsthand and I'm not too impressed by I respect it and I respect the bands that are doing this, but there's all these other pieces where I'm kind of like, I'm just not too into some of this."
Right. Yeah. And that did end up happening, certainly. And I think that just tends to exist. Punk is full of hypocrisy and
Yeah.
cliches, and it really I don't think that matters where you are. That's just there now. How much of that there is in a certain locale can vary. And I just at a certain point in my life, I became pretty overwhelmed with that in the Bay Area, and just the really, the fashion aspect and the judgmental kind of social cliques really kind of wore on me when really, like, going back to those early discoveries, I was into it because a from a lyrical level, everything I was hearing spoke to me and felt relatable, and it felt like something that anyone could do. And then I think that I made the mistake of building it up in my head as this incredibly inclusive utopian subculture, which there are certainly elements of that involved, but you know, there are also elements that involve, oh, this is, you just created a separate version of what it is that you're supposedly running away from. So that
Yeah.
became frustrating for me at a certain point.
Yeah, I think a lot of us saw that too, where we were trying to get away from the high school scene, but because that's what we saw 8 hours of the day.
Right.
And
It's like, I'm doing this because I fucking don't want to listen to Silverchair, um, or whatever the mainstream rock of the time is, and I'm sick of these people at my high school calling me a skater fag and throwing shit at me every day, or fucking jumping my friends, or whatever. It's
yeah,
like, trying to get away from that brutal teenage culture that, my school didn't, surprisingly. Going to school in El Cerrito, there was definitely a core group of us that were kind of this, I just call it like a ragtag group of misfits from different kind of scenes, but there really wasn't a punk presence other than those three young women I keep kind of mentioning.
yeah.
There were maybe a couple other exterior friends that were into it a little bit, but there definitely was not a punk scene at my high school, which I find kind of interesting.
We had the same thing though. I mean, like we had to leave a bunch of my. It sounds like we had a very parallel kind of thing going on, where I had like my group of friends and we were all super tight, but we had to leave high school and go to these shows that were local shows. In Jersey was all Legion halls, and
Right,
the club
right.
shows were in the city, so it was easy access for us to stay this side of the bridge and not have to go into New York where it was, expensive and crazy. And we had Legion halls, and so we'd go there, and that's where we'd see these people. But for you guys, same thing. Like you had to leave high school with your group of friends and go, hey man, like we're gonna go to this place. But it sounds like, well, from what I gather, is a lot of a majority of the shows were all clubs, and there weren't really Legion halls back then.
No, there were teen centers that were doing a lot of shows when I was in high school. Shit, even churches here and there.
Oh,
But
okay.
that, and yeah, there was a fair amount of that. And then, once I was playing out in high school, we'd kind of travel around. Um, I don't want to say regionally, but like in the immediate Bay Area, and there were definitely spots, especially once you got a little further out. You're not in Oakland, Berkeley, or San Francisco. Then you tend to see more of the kind of suburban DIY setups where people were throwing shows and in, yeah, like lodges, halls, teen centers, churches. But that being said, I also had Gilman and the Berkeley Square, which was this. I actually really loved it. People have mixed feelings about it, but um, 21 plus shows and booked so many good bands. Both the Berkeley Square and Gilman were within 15 minutes of the house I grew up in. So that was an incredibly fortunate thing to have access to.
Was it a common thing for you guys to just take the bridge or one of the bridges to go to shows, or was that like not a real thing?
That's I wanted to mention that because we'd go over when I was skating heavily. I'd take Bart over and go skate, but I didn't go over for a lot of shows to San Francisco until maybe my senior year, or certainly after high school. And I think really it was that we were getting so many good shows in the East Bay that it was kind of like this why bother mentality, because fuck it, we have this here, and that's the expensive place, and it's driving or a BART ride. I don't know, we were getting enough at home that it wasn't really a thing.
Yeah, you're like, it's also we're broke, so we want to stay local.
Totally, yeah.
So like at what point was it middle school or high school when you started to actually write music?
um that depends on what you classify as writing music. I started, I was playing in what you would, like, with those three young women and then some other friends. I was dabbling, I think, in eighth grade, and then certainly by high school. And would I say that any of that was even like approaching good? Fuck no. It was pretty awful, and I'm even lowering the bar to like
Okay, I
a
didn't
high
say
school.
I didn't ask if it was good. I just asked if you're writing music.
Oh, I'm just telling you, it was
None of
a
the shit
fucking
we
awful.
wrote when we started was good. Let's just
Yeah,
like put it
I
out there.
it's nothing I'm doing is good still. No, it's like yeah. So I eighth grade, ninth grade for sure, and then
Like,
playing shows in venues like Gilman and the Berkeley Square. I think I was playing in a really, and just let's just get put the cat out of the bag, a fucking awful ska punk band at like 14 for sure, 15.
what made you want to do that though? Like, was there anything when before you were in middle school or high school when you were watching, I don't know, MTV or saw something where you're like, I want to go in that direction in life. Like, I want to write music. I don't give a shit how I figured it out. I want to do it.
I mean, I really, I'd take it back to kind of that initial discovery period of punk, and then some of those bands I really gravitated to, and a lot of it for me, Mike, was the lyrics and how the lyrics made me feel. Those women also, the young women also passed off Jawbreaker to me at a very young age. And it's just, I felt really moved. And then kind of coupling that with the common idea in punk that at least in certain lights, it seems like something that's accessible for everyone and that anyone can play. I just kind of, it's like I was listening to it and I had an interest in playing music. So, I mean, fuck it. Why not just start a band and give it a shot?
So it's funny that you say that because I remember when we met, again, we played that show. We'll talk about it later on, but when we played Fireside together, that's when we first met. And then we didn't really get to start know each other until we went and like partied together, and then we had the long drives, and that's when like bands really start to get to know each other. And I think the one thing that stood out to me about you is that you had like a different perspective about music where I would listen to it and I just like liked songs because they were catchy and I never was lyrically driven for any kind of unless it was an emotional stance about like girls or just kind of just some random shit. I never there was never like a not I don't want to say political because I don't want to like pigeonhole you there, but like kind of like a driving force to kind of get something done. And I remember when I met you, I felt that I understood that there was that direction with you listening to music that it meant something to you as like this is meaningful. This is there's a message here. Like there's a movement behind this, and that's what I felt you were following.
Totally, and I think that was my belief in punk. Like it was there for a reason, and that was something that extended beyond just entertainment or fun. And I don't know, to this day still I don't want to create music unless I believe that it has a meaning or a purpose to it. Um, and I don't think there's anything wrong with the other side of that either. It's just kind of how I'm aligned, and it really just stems back to those early experiences I had with the genre. And yeah, I don't I just I can't I have a hard time um, taking any sort of creative thing I do seriously if I don't feel like there's a purpose on some level, whether that's making a listener or a reader feel more comfortable or feel inspired. Whatever it is, there has to be something there for
Well,
me.
I feel like you wanted to get someone to leave the show and learn something, right?
Yeah, I mean, maybe to some degree, or who who the fuck was I also at like 18, 19, 20 to be given advice really? I mean, I probably needed it more than I should have been given it, but I think yeah, maybe more so kind of creating a community and opening up a dialogue and building something in terms of like a group of people. You know, I, I I'd say at that point in my life, the ultimate would have been leaving a show and going and hanging out with some people and like having a conversation based on music or lyrics that were experienced at that show, and just building something, whether it's strong friendships or having a dialogue about issues that people are facing personally or in society. Like, yeah, that's what I wanted.
But it was so weird though because you weren't annoying about it. And that's what I loved about you. Like you would have this stance, but we'd also go out drinking, and you guys would just be going around the party and finding all the floaters and putting them into one beer and drinking them, and then diving in,
Okay.
and then jumping into bushes for no reason. So there was this great balance of when it came time to discuss something, you would like you'd have a stance on it, but you were never just this outspoken, annoying fucking person who was just always talking about it. You're like, look, I get it, but shut the fuck up. Like you never came off as that to me.
Oh,
Like,
thanks, man. I appreciate that because I believe that you can't be super serious and pushy all the time, and you can't be a fucking goon all the time. So some sort of happy or healthy medium is ideal. And it's also we've all been to those shows. I don't want to mention a couple come to mind, but like kind of iconic people that are just raging at audiences or just riffing out way too hard, verbally in a social setting in a conversation. It's just it can be totally obnoxious. So I'm glad that I didn't give that vibe off to you. I'm sure I came across that way to other people at certain times.
well, I feel like I would have seen it, especially since we were on the road together for so long. It would have been, because out of how many there was, what was that? There was four of us plus a roadie, four of you plus Dan, roadie
Dan, it's
Dan.
super funny. Dan and I are playing music right now, and we can maybe talk about this later, but fuck, he just brought up that show in South Dakota, and I'd kind of blurred that one
Oh my
out.
God, yeah.
That night, legendary.
Where we
Holy
thought we were
shit.
dead.
Yeah, there's like, yeah, it's there's the fucking eviction party. Dan was like reminded me that he woke up and the curtains were on fire. It's like
Okay,
that
so
was a gnarly one.
we're gonna jump back, but I just spoke about that in the My Pal Trigger episode that just launched, and then Discount is launching this week, and I think I talked about it with Ryan as well, where I think it was the Discount one where he is like, yeah, we were on the road. One of the two fucking narrators. They're like, we're on the road, and this band was getting evicted, and they were destroying the house. And I was like, wait a minute, like, where was this for you? And they were in somewhere in North Carolina. I said, because I was like, there was a place that we went to where by the end of the night we were all throwing beer bottles at the toilet in the bathroom because they were getting evicted. This is the same night we're
Yeah,
talking about, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure, like, man, like literally, Dan was sleeping and someone lit the curtains on fire. I'm pretty sure oh man, I don't know if this was Shane put his head through glass quite a few times, and I'm pretty sure that was one of those nights. But yeah, those eviction parties, fuck, and I encountered a lot of those living in Chicago. They're fucking wild, man.
That must have been a thing.
I
I
guess
bet there's got to be this common thread in that era or even now where eviction parties where these young kids are getting thrown out there like, let's fucking burn the place down in some
hell yeah, and it's like if you're
aspect.
not getting your deposit back and the landlord's a dick and you're not worried about your credit rating, which what the fuck are you doing hanging out in a punk scene at like 21 if you're worried about your credit rating?
Yeah.
Yeah, and just destroying houses.
I love that you and Dan were talking about this. I love that you guys talked about this the other day.
He randomly brought it up recently. It was funny.
Was that when he was wearing the wrestling outfit?
The singlet, yeah,
The
his
singlet.
Chongo alter ego.
Yeah, and he jumped into the fucking bushes with it.
Yeah, that was a
Uh,
night for sure.
I'll just send you some of the photos. I have 13 rolls that are developed that are in my closet right now. Of
Oh
physical
man,
film.
send me the select hits, please.
Yeah, I will definitely say I have so many photos. That's why all this stuff's so vivid. All right, so you're in high school, you're developing your stance on life, and like, how did the band form? Or actually, no, wait, no. What came first? Like, no, I think you already said that. Like you already started going to shows, and then you started another band with those girls, and then what led that to the Wonder Years?
And I mean, then I was in a band all through high school. That even like we got up to Oregon, and Southern California and played a fair amount. And that band kind of, people went to college, people had another band going. It disbanded, and then I got together with some friends and friends of friends, and then the Wonder Years started. And there was kind of the two big eras of that band. The one that you encountered was the latter of the two. And yeah, I mean, after that, we put out a 7 inch and on Tomato Head, which was kind of like the Dill slash Asian Man Records, sort of affiliated through Mike Parks' bands, Kank and Pickle. It was the drummer of that band's label,
Okay.
and things kind of got rolling from there pretty quickly. By the time that first record was out, we were hitting the road, and I was 19, I guess,
Oh
20,
wow.
19,
Yeah, yeah, because
and
we're the same age. And then, like how long? So that was with Wonder Years.
yeah.
How did you guys form though? Like how did you guys get together and like that whole thing come about?
The first incarnation of that, and you didn't. By the time you encountered that band, it was basically a completely different lineup.
I
But
do remember that. Yeah.
the first incarnation is like my really good friend Peter, and then we had kind of connections through music to a couple other guys. Adam, there's a guy named Nate in the band. So we formed that up, and then things shifted. Some people couldn't tour, and I was pretty ingrained in the North Bay music community here in the Bay Area. And Josh Staples we're still close, and
Nice.
just I adore that guy, and I always have. And it was I kind of he had asked me to be in one of his bands, and I said no because I was pumped on the Wonder Years, and then later he offered to join at least for a while the Velvet Team was kind of taking a break, and so that's how that kind of came to be.
Yeah, actually, I interviewed Blair from Knapsack, and he brought Josh's name up, and I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, how do you know
Hmm.
Josh? Because he is the fucking man. And then I talked about how when you guys went on tour, he had just got married to Sarah.
Right, right.
Yeah, and then I think yeah, like towards the end we
And
got
then
a card or something like that.
and Josh played for a bit with um, the Jello Sound or Knapsack recently. It was one of the little reunion jaunts they did. I want to say a couple years ago.
Yeah, and he played with was it Sunny Day or Fire Theft? Was it one of those bands?
I didn't hear he didn't
Some
mention that, or I'm forgetting it. But
I thought there was something I heard years ago about that, but it was like a band like that where I was like, holy shit, that's because I saw a picture of him, like, wait a minute, I know that guy. Um, so when you guys, so the second iteration comes around and you guys get together, like, what was, why did that come about? Like, why did the first round leave?
one guy wouldn't tour, and another one went to college, and then I don't, two out of the three I still talk to really frequently and consider close friends. I don't remember why one person left or was swapped out. But it was mainly, it's really like I will say that I really pushed people back in the day, and I've tried to back off that over the years. But really, I think that people's life shit is generally what has brought the bands I'm in apart, and the desire to do other things. And it can be really hard to justify being in a band, especially one that's going to go on the road with other aspirations, and especially if you're not making any money. And we
Yeah,
certainly were not making any fucking money. So,
yeah. But like, what was your vision? Because obviously you were like, I'm gonna captain the ship, and especially leading to two bands later, you're doing Hanalei and Hanalei. Am I saying this right? I keep Hanalei.
yeah,
Okay.
you're good.
But I mean, that gets to a point where you see where someone later on in life gets to the point where they're going, you know what? Like even like Dan from Lifetime when he did Paint It Black, he was just so fed up of doing these bands. He's like, I'm not gonna fucking rely on anybody anymore because I want to do this one thing, and it's just to make music. And I'm sick of having other people fuck it up, so I'm just gonna do my own thing, and other people can kind of jump in and out. But I'm gonna do this. Like,
Right.
is that driven by when you were in high school going or in like out of high school just saying like I really want to just play music for as a career?
I mean, I don't, that's an interesting question because this is a bit of a sidebar, but you know, first and foremost, I will own the fact that I could be pretty harsh, and I don't think I was easy to work with for a lot of the friends that I played with. So it was equally as much my fault if things kind of got um, personally weird ever. But really, I think it was primarily just as a desire. People wanted to do other things in their lives, and I really wanted to go after it. I don't know if I'd ever say I fully wanted it as a career because I actually remember on. It might even have been that Wonder Years tour that we were on together. It was certainly the later era. It was very bizarre. I was taking a nap in the back of the van, and just kind of woke up with this epiphany, um, where I realized I was never gonna make it in any sort of conventional sense. It hit me like a wall. I swear it was so odd, Mike. And I kept doing it for years and years and years, regardless of that, and still do it. I don't tour very much these days, but I think it was more so about the experience and the camaraderie and the creative aspects of it. I mean, it I fucking loved it, and I still do. I don't love touring and sleeping on floors and
Yeah.
waking up to curtains on fire anymore, but um, I think I just the whole thing and the travel and adventure aspect of it, was really appealing to me. I think that, later on, once you do 10, 15 shitty US tours, then the luster of fucking Toledo, Ohio wears off. And, I started even recently, about 5 years ago, be like, oh, are you going to go to Fest in Gainesville this year? I'm like, fuck no, man. Even if I play it, I'm going to get, they're going to pay me $100. Everyone in my band has to fly out there. I was like, that's a surf trip to Costa Rica or Nicaragua for me. So no, I'm gonna spend that money on like on an adventure. But when you're younger, just like the ability to see the states, and I was lucky enough to see a shit ton of Europe and Canada too touring, and what a privilege, and how could I turn that down? There was no way I was walking away from that
Well, it sounds
for
like it was
school and
more.
everything.
It sounds like it was more. Actually, a couple things really break down, but it sounds like it was more about you. Even though you were living in this city that to others are considered this big deal, when you're there, you can't really see the forest for the trees, or you just do see the forest for the trees, and you're like, this kind of blows. And it sounds like there's this like escape that was probably again, this is like kind of like a psychological breakdown, which doesn't really meant to be, but
No, I've had it. It's all good.
it sounds like because I really try to like examine bands and why they did what they did and why some of the bands I talked to actually got to a point where they made a living off of it and some bands didn't do that. And I always really want to see like what was the difference between that because I do it because I was in a band and we never made it and I think there's a part of me that's like why didn't we actually get to where I wanted to go to. And I think maybe some bands, like you said, you were kind of difficult to deal with, which I want to talk about. And it sounds like you just really wanted to get like more of like I said, get an escapism where you wanted to just kind of go have adventures and see things, and the music was almost it was parallel, but like a little bit secondary to that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say going back to the question that we discussed about the lyricism and the goal of kind of community building,
Yeah.
or using the creativity and the art as a force of pushing an agenda or actually changing things. That was certainly always there, but the touring and the just kind of all in thing for me was equally so, just the experience of it and the travel and the adventure and adventuring with friends and the promise of meeting new people, seeing new places, and so forth. I mean, again, I can't express enough how lucky I feel to have had that opportunity. And once that carrot's dangled, you'll keep going after it until the wheels fall off, which they usually do. But
Yeah.
I couldn't get enough. It was like a total, like, kind of almost like addict headspace with traveling and being immersed in music. And it got, it's thinking back too, is once I'd moved to Chicago and was doing the Ghost thing, when that band disbanded, which I would say is in that case probably the majority of that was my fault. I I was working at Fireside and Bottom Lounge and Shuba's and all these venues, as that was basically what was putting the bread on the table for me. And in hindsight, I realized that, man, I'd go on tour and then come home and be immersed in music and these scenes 4 nights, 5 nights a week, and that was fucking overkill, man. Like,
Yeah.
I had no break from it, and I think that I ended up really burning myself out there for a while, and I definitely had to take a break until I came back to the Bay Area.
Yeah. What like actually that was like the one I was like oh God, so many things came up there. But like I think the one thing that I kind of got from that though is that there's one thing where there's bands being on tour and they really want it, and it affects them as individuals because not enough kids showed up or they didn't get paid enough. So they're focusing on that. Where when we were on tour, like with you guys, we'd play in front of like fucking 5 people, 10 people, and then afterwards we're like, all right, it's fucking party time. And yeah, we can kind of sit there, and a couple of people in the bands were kind of focused on that, but the rest of us and you guys were like, let's go out and let's have a good fucking time and experience, Iowa or South Dakota at you know, that fucking Mexican restaurant we went to afterwards
The
in the middle of fucking
bounty of
nowhere.
Sioux Falls.
Yeah, it was just like, and it was, I think there's that balance of where you see the people that are there for the experience and the people that are there to make it a career, because the career becomes a lot heavier and it makes them just a little bit more less pleasing to be around.
Totally. And when I, admittedly, once the Ghost got a fair amount of traction, I leaned towards that side quite a bit, and I was absolutely at my worst as a person and probably as a musician. I think that, my music and my writing lyrically really suffered during that. And I was honestly taking shit way too seriously and being too harsh. And I started getting negative. If, we'd play a show and there'd be 2 people there. And for the longest time, that didn't bother me. And then it started to. And I think that ultimately I realized that I'd fucking burnt out and needed to hit the reset and go back kind of to that earlier mind state of just really loving the music and having faith in the community that it can instill and bring about. And yeah, when I took it seriously, I suffered, and I think so did other people around me.
What would you become like when you were getting a little bummed out about stuff, or
I
were you
think
just, yeah.
I was riding my friends in my band a little too hard, getting way too upset if a show didn't go well, getting we were both of the Wonder Years in the Ghost. Luckily, we had booking agents, but we were getting paired up with a lot of kind of, I wouldn't say straight up pop punk, but stuff that didn't really suit us. And even if it were, even if it was a bigger show, I, I didn't really think, oh, these people that like this band aren't gonna like us. They're not gonna get it, and just getting pissy about shit like that. And it's I really wasn't seeing. How fortunate I was at certain points, and I regret that I was kind of an asshole on occasion. I don't think I was fucking brutal or a dictator, but I certainly wasn't at my best, and I certainly could have done a better job in terms of kindness and really seeing things for what they were, seeing the positive aspects, which I certainly did at one point, and I feel like I do now. It's just, people fuck up and learn, I suppose.
Do you ever actually have communications with anybody who is in a band now, or have ever gone to a show and talked to someone who's a younger band trying to do this now?
Sure. So one of my ex-students, and if you don't keep that in the interview, we were talking earlier about how I've been teaching middle school for
Oh, I'm
about
keeping
nine
it in
years
there.
now.
Don't worry, it's gonna be in
Okay. So one of my students, like we bonded. I was the only teacher at the school that would let him keep his skateboard in my room, and we kind of loosely kept in touch. And he hit me up last year, and I think he's a senior in high school this year, maybe a junior. Armani, if you listen, I'm sorry if I blew that, but he hit me up just kind of asking for some advice, and we got to talking about recording, and getting a record out there and DIY versus trying to find a label. And the long story short is I ended up recording a demo for him. It was super, super fun and rewarding, and honestly one of the more rewarding experiences I've had coming out of teaching, even though it wasn't in a classroom, but kind of chatting with him or younger people about the landscape. It's like it's interesting. I feel like it's the same yet different. I feel like the digitizing of everything, and I'm not going to knock it or take up that dinosaur role, but it's certainly changed everything, and I think that it's oversaturated it and made things far more difficult in some ways and simpler in others.
Yeah, like I watch all of the social media stuff. Like I'm very heavily involved in it because I work for myself and I run like this podcast, Instagram and Facebook, and I have like a comic. So I do all these different things where I'm constantly on all these platforms. And I still have that thing where I look at the I look through the eyes of myself 20 years ago of thinking, man, if I had this shit, I would do this. And the cool thing was that last year we were able to play a reunion show in Jersey.
I saw that. That's rad.
Yeah, it was like basically it came out from the podcast. It was just, hey, I see technology. I want to document the scene. There's an easy way to do this through Skype, and I know how to do all the technical stuff, and I can just put it online. And we played the show. I remember having such a blast the entire week because I started an Instagram account, and prior to that, I had been doing um, like free hour-long sessions where there's a venue a block for me, and I said, hey, I want to do something that's going to educate bands how to promote themselves for free with their phone. And I just saw these avenues that thing going, and I get up there and I'm like, here's 18 ways where you can do this. And I start off, I'm like, this is why I'm doing this. I used to play in a band. This is me. This is, all the shit I did. And I think that you guys have this advantage now. And there's so much fun shit that you can do as a band now to get yourself out there and like expose yourself.
Totally. Like, the accessibility to promotion and shit recording, man. It's, like back in the day, making a Tascam 4-track sound decent was high art. Like that's not something that's easily done. And I feel like any young person that's creative and coming up right now can spend a few hours researching some techniques and throw on, a basic DAW and like create some pretty good sounding stuff. And that to me seems like luxurious, but I'm incredibly stoked for young people making music right now. It's just a great resource to have.
So like kind of go back to like the whole Wonder Years era. How many records did you guys officially put out?
So, the early incarnation of that band, we started with, I don't even, we demoed some shit. And then there was a 7-inch, um, full length, and then kind of the switch over between members was like starting on the second EP, or the first EP after the full length. And then we ended on that Function Over Fashion EP, which was when, we were traveling with you all.
I remember that too. I remember when you guys showed up, there was like, didn't you just get Caitlin in the band?
Yeah, she was fresh in, and I've played with a lot of good drummers. I've always kind of concealed my own flaws musically by refusing to play with drummers that I don't think are exceptional. And in all fairness to everyone else, Caitlin was certainly the best drummer I've ever played with.
She was probably one of the sickest drummers I ever saw. She was
Yeah,
just so fluid. Like Dave Grohl was like I think her like
that was her deal for sure.
yeah. And she like anyone everyone listening, she was so quiet and just like super chill, but she'd get up there on the drums and she was so solid and technical and just had this like focus when she played. It
Right.
was
I mean,
it was insane.
in absolute talent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually
Like
lucked
like I
out.
said,
Yeah.
I've not ever played with a bad drummer in any band in the past really like 20 years. But she is just a rarity for sure.
Do you still keep are you still keep in touch with her?
We keep in touch like super loosely. We actually did there was a benefit show up north in Petaluma at the Phoenix Theater, which is another in my opinion very very crucial and historic Bay Area venue. We did a reunion show there for a benefit, and it was great seeing her. It was great playing with her. She's still playing music and has been in and out of a lot of bands. So
Really?
yeah,
Wasn't she living in Seattle or Washington?
Portland. I don't know if she's in Portland. I don't know if she's still there or outside of it.
Oh
But
wow.
yeah, she's still doing stuff.
I wish I would have known that when I was out there. I lived in Portland for like 3 months in 2015, and I wish I know. I actually ran into I met up with Chris from the Lawrence Arms. We got coffee.
Oh, killer.
Yeah, it was cool because I was talking to him about the tour, and I had learned so much from that tour. It was insane. I mean, we were on the road for like a month and a half, and like meeting up with you guys and getting to. It was cool meeting people because especially with other bands, you'd sit there, you'd watch bands play certain nights, and some nights you were like, okay, I don't, I don't really want to do this again, so I'd like go outside. But so it's like but you'd watch them be like, dude, you guys were on fucking fire tonight. And then you see sometimes where the crowd was like really into them. You see where there was like not into them. You'd see like the inner turmoil. But then afterwards, that's where you really get to know everyone. And then sometimes you'd switch out and like jump into someone else's van when they'd be going to the, the next destination and just talking to people and really get to know them. And that's like why I totally fucking love that. And I
Totally,
remember,
man. And that's really what I'm saying. Like that experience, like that kept me the promise of that, and it just kept me going. And to this day, I've made some of the best friends I have and met some of the most amazing people in my life through music, and I wouldn't trade that shit in for anything.
yeah. I mean, I think that was kind of it. I think there was this point of where, like I said, I think I'm seeing a lot of similarities between you and I. It's that I think we saw that in high school, and there was this feeling that all this stuff surrounding this high school crowd was such bullshit, and we were like, man, there's something bigger than this, where people are like real. There's connection out there, and real stories, and real like human like interaction with people. And I'm just not going to get that here, and I can't wait to get the fuck out of these four walls.
Totally, and I'm 100% with you on that. And I think that, that spirit, especially in young people, is kind of always there. And whether it's punk or some other subculture or thing, bringing that together, like that's just in certain individuals, that's part of their nature. And I think it very much still continues to thrive. Just perhaps maybe with a different label, or you know, it's alive and well.
Do you think you get to see that where you have been teaching in middle school for so long, where you almost took that knowledge and came back and you're kind of overseeing it subconsciously, being like, this is pretty interesting to watch this because it's almost when you see a kid having a shit day, you can be like, look, like this doesn't matter. It matters, but emotionally, and you're going to remember this later on because you're going to be so kind of mad about certain things, but like it doesn't fucking matter. So it's like you can almost be there to tell them like, hey man, it's just going to be cool.
Yeah, I try to give back in that sense, and punk to me, this could be, we'd have to talk for a lot longer, but punk to me really tied into teaching,
I
and
could see that.
there's a direct connection there for me. But yeah, I think kind of as long as we as teachers, as part of my philosophy, kind of remember what that youthful experience is like, and remember our own hardships and successes, that makes us much more effective in the classroom and with individuals, and kind of keeping a personal relationship that's obviously detached because you're a teacher and an adult, but showing that you truly care and can
Yeah.
empathize, or understand.
Do you remember, and I'm kind of gonna kind of hone this in and wrap it up shortly, but do you remember, actually, I do remember, what was the song you guys ended with where where you, Josh, and Shane would yell the lyrics at the end?
Oh, that's the second song on the EP. I can't. Let's see. It's the industry of shit talking line. I don't remember the name of that song.
That was like my favorite. That would be like I think like us and Lawrence Arms would sit there and watch you guys for that part. And I remember vividly playing at the Nile. Do you remember that in the Nile in
Oh
the
God, it's
Tucson?
the fucking. God, I feel
Temple?
like I almost died of heat stroke a
The
few times
hottest thing, the
in that
hottest
base.
show ever.
Yeah, it's like, oh, here's like it's 105 degrees outside, maybe 100. It's a mild 103 in the basement of the Nile, and like let's fucking drink 10 beers in the van before we play, and then just try to go off while playing. It's like, yeah, God, if I tried to do that now, the paramedics would be pulling me out of there so fast.
Oh my God, it was so stupid fucking hot. But that,
Brutal. Like even if the show is great, and like I'm to this day I'm psyched for the people of Phoenix and that had access to that venue, because you got to have something. And Will and the other people that did shows there, they're doing a great service. But fuck, that place was hot, and I'd get scared to play there sometimes. Like, can I fucking get through the set? But everyone always got through it.
yeah, because we got there. Well, we drove from. We had played San Diego 2 days before at the Epicenter.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that place, man, the epicenter, dude. It's always cool to put a fucking venue next to a police station. That's gonna work out real well.
Okay, I don't remember. Did that have an effect on that show?
Not on that show, but that place is weird. I'm pretty sure that the epicenter had religious affiliations too, if I remember correctly. But it was just that was a weird spot, and there were incidences with it was a police station or a highway patrol or some shit. But yeah, there were definitely incidents as a result of that proximity.
I remember I lived in San Diego a couple years after actually, yeah, about a year after the band broke up after that tour, and I was like, where the fuck is this place? It's like I want to go
Dude, it was
back there
yeah.
and
'Cause
see
I've spent
that.
a lot of time in San Diego. It's super far east. It was like way out. Um,
Yeah.
not really probably not known that you or I'd want to hang out on in for social or scenic purposes.
I mentioned it earlier in the interview, like you guys would go around and grab cups at parties in all flavors and put them into one cup. How the fuck did that start?
You can just do that at like house parties in Oakland and Berkeley when we
So
were at home. It's
gross.
just fucking dumb. Yeah, like it's weird. Like myself included, at some points, I'm pretty grossed out by it. But there's like some, it's not necessarily in behavior towards other people, but just like kind of like that beer culture, like tie-ins to like frattiness. It was fucking weird, and it grosses me out to this day. But
I think that was the first party we went to with you guys. You guys were doing that, and I'm like, we have 3 weeks left with these guys.
quite remember, but it must. I guess that doing shit like that was fun, and I'm sorry that that was like your introduction to us. You're probably just like, who the fuck are these clowns?
I think it was more of like my introduction to because Shane was really going at it with that.
Oh yeah, he went hard, dude,
Yeah,
for sure.
he like was like you got like Caitlin was always quiet and Josh was quiet. Like you kind of were like kind of pushing it a little bit, but like not pushing it in a negative sense. But like Shane would just be fucking on when
Yeah,
we go to these fucking parties. Oh
more
man.
nights not for sure.
What ended up like what was the final straw with you guys for calling it quits?
So, I mean, Josh was basically, I knew when he joined the band that there was an expiration date because the Velveteen would eventually ramp up to do something, and that was like his main jam. So that happened, and then Caitlin was just not having a good time for personal reasons. So was once that went down, I kind of figured, fuck, we'd already changed the lineup of this band almost entirely once. I can't, in good conscience, do that again. So Shane and I just kind of agreed to pull the plug on it. And also with those two, man, like there is no replacement for Caitlin or Josh. That's even if I'd wanted to take that route, they're just pretty untouchable musicians in my mind, and I didn't want to deal with that. So Shane and I were just like, we're gonna start a new band, and then it was, the Ghost for a long time, then me doing solo stuff, and then Ole Hole and Great Apes up until last year, and I don't know, whatever the fuck is next.
Did he move to Chicago as well? When you did, because you moved to
Shane,
Chicago,
yeah,
I thought, yeah, because you moved to Chicago to do the Ghost.
yeah, we had started in the Bay Area, and we're like our first real tour was Small Brown Bike and 12-Hour Turn, which was awesome and
Oh wow.
crazy. And then we just, the other thing about living in the Bay Area and being in a touring band is it was less so now, but still, or less so then, but still very much expensive, and we couldn't fucking afford to tour and pay rent. And we had a lot of friends in Chicago when the Ghost was going, and we realized we could live out there super cheap. There was a great music scene. It felt to me initially far less snobby than the Bay Area, and it turned out to be that. It was a great place to live and play music,
Yeah, I was
and it
gonna
was
say
very
like, what were your like, yeah, what was your view on that? Because there, I'd say like I mentioned it earlier, there was San Francisco, Chicago, New York City, wherever I can't even think of like anywhere else that were like LA, I guess. But they thought of the places where you wanted to go to start music, and you had the chance to live in San Francisco for so long, and then compare it to Chicago. So like, how did it compare, or like
I
better
mean,
or worse?
in terms of the music community and shit that I wanted to do, 100 times better. I had an amazing time there. I living there for about 6 years in the early 2000s was phenomenal, and I got to be around so many good bands and explore music so much and meet so many great people there. It felt like, I mean, it's so much more of a city than San Francisco, and it makes Oakland feel like a village. It's phenomenal. Ultimately, I needed to kind of take a step back from music briefly, and I really, now I spend a lot of time outside, and I did miss having grown up in the Bay Area and around the ocean and the mountains. I really got to miss that after a certain point, but that is that is a great city. For a long time I called it the last great American city. I don't, I usually go back about once a year, once every couple of years to hang out. I haven't been back in a while, but it still feels good to me. I know it's gotten more expensive and neighborhoods change really quickly there, but yeah, I got nothing but positive stuff to say about living there.
Yeah. I remember you being out there. I was like, man, it just seemed like you fit out there.
I mean, yeah, it suited me a lot more than the Bay Area did at that point, in terms of music and people.
Yeah.
It's funny because people are like, oh man, people are dicks in Chicago. I'm like, no, I still to this day think people are far, and generally even outside of punk, like people are far more snobby and kind of standoffish in California, especially the Bay Area, than they are in Chicago. I think people might be mixing up the word dicks with honest. Like some people just don't like honesty, or just people that are upfront. So
I've never talked to someone from Chicago where I thought they were an asshole. I was like, man, you're like just between like Amber, our old roadie, Tony, um, God, who else? I talked to Chris from Braid. Like, there's such a sense of pride from people who are from there. It's stupid.
totally, and the music scene is a lot more inclusive too. At least I found, like,
Oh yeah,
band in different genres all getting along, and it's very like was much more community oriented and all about helping out than the Bay Area really felt to me. So that was refreshing at the time.
yeah.
Yeah.
But all right, man. Well, I will let you go. Wrap this up with two more questions, and I will let you go on your way to, get ready to be a father soon.
Yeah.
How far away is this again?
My wife's due in about 4 weeks, so anytime now, I
Jesus.
guess.
Wow, that's fucking wild, dude.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Um, yeah. But
All right,
Mike, also before you
yeah,
ask these questions, just want to say it was an absolute pleasure talking to you, and thanks a lot for having me, and let's definitely stay in touch.
yeah, dude. No, I was stoked. I was stoked that you were happy to check it out. I was glad that you actually got to hear a couple episodes or just like scan a couple episodes, and you were like, wow, this is actually pretty good.
Yeah, I
So,
think you're doing a killer job, man. So thank you.
thanks, man. I appreciate that. All right, so before I ask you the last question, what would you like to plug besides or ninth grade math or history? What do English?
Like, plug in terms of things that I'm doing,
It could be.
or
I've asked this question recently because I started this. This is the newer season, even though the episodes have just continued from number. And when I started asking people this, it was bands that were still making music, and I thought, oh, I should ask this question because the first season, no one was really. Everyone had been stepped away for so long from really creating music or anything, and they were. That I felt like I was like, oh, I didn't even think to ask anybody that. And then when I started the second season, it was like Newfound Glory and like Chad was still doing things, and I'm like, oh, people actually can still promote music, but it's kind of morphed into either that or just giving a shout out to someone's band or something. So it's an open-ended question to whatever you want to plug.
I mean, honestly, I'm just gonna keep it. I'll give you two little tidbits here. One, just kind of shout out to everyone in my life that's tolerated me playing music for a long time, because it hasn't been easy for people, and I recognize that. And most of my friends have supported me, and I really appreciate that, and all the people that I've met along the way. Thank you very much. And then I guess, man, since you mentioned the kid, one thing that's kind of been eating me up a bit is this is a it feels like a pretty scary time in the course of history to be bringing a life into the world. And I would just encourage people as individuals to take care of the planet in any way that you can, and B, really try to educate people that are younger than you, or even your peers older than you, on ways that they can be kind of kinder to one another, and to the world we live in, because it feels pretty maxed out right now, and it's concerning. So yeah, those are
Yeah.
my shout outs.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the last question kind of goes into that, but I'll just ask it anyway. Um, to end this to finalize the interview, cap it off. What scene ethics do you still hold on to this day?
Right. I mean, I still believe that music can be something used to change the world around us. It just doesn't. Music doesn't live in music. I still believe that art of any sort should contain meaning on some level. Don't put shit out there unless it means something to you and you feel like it can mean something to other people, or that the process of putting it out there is a cathartic one for you. And let's see what else. I really do believe that punk or any subculture or any genre of music should ideally be pretty inclusive of all people, even though it doesn't manifest that way, unfortunately, sometimes. But yeah, and I definitely believe in the capability of people to do things themselves. And if you're going to hold these kind of ethos, to avoid the big box system whenever you can, because it's pretty fucking trashy.